On August 5, 2010, a section of rock the size of a skyscraper collapsed inside a copper and gold mine in Chile, sealing 33 men nearly half a mile underground. For the first 17 days, nobody on the surface even knew if they were alive. They were. All 33 of them crammed into a space roughly the size of a small apartment, with a survival ration meant to last a handful of men for 2 or 3 days. What happened inside that mine over the following 69 days is one of the strangest, most instructive stories about human behavior under extreme pressure that modern history has on record. And almost none of it looks the way you'd expect. Journalist Hector Tobar, who spent years interviewing the miners directly for his account of the disaster, uncovered something that should genuinely surprise you. The single biggest threat to those 33 men in those first desperate days wasn't the rock, or the heat, or the dwindling air. It was each other. Specifically, it was the question of who got to decide how the food was shared. 2 days' worth of emergency rations, 33 men with no idea if rescue would come in a week or a month or ever. In that vacuum, one man's authority mattered more than almost anything else underground. Luis Urzua, the shift supervisor, made a call that, according to multiple miners' own later accounts, is the single decision that kept the group from fracturing into chaos. He didn't let anyone eat freely from what remained. He rationed it by committee into tiny portions, doled out on a strict schedule, stretching 2 days of food into more than 2 weeks. Here's what's easy to miss about that decision. It wasn't really about calories. 33 men splitting almost nothing weren't going to survive on nutrition alone, regardless of how carefully it was measured. What the rationing system actually did was something else entirely. It gave the group a structure, a reason to trust that no one was being secretly favored and no one was being left to starve first. In a situation stripped of almost every kind of certainty, a shared, visible system of fairness became its own kind of survival tool, just as important as the food itself. That pattern repeated again and again as the days stretched on. The miners divided themselves into small work groups, each with specific responsibilities, mirroring the shift structure they'd used above ground before the collapse ever happened. Tobar's research found that the men who struggled hardest, psychologically, tended to be the ones without a defined role, left with nothing to organize their hours around except fear. The men who held together best were the ones with a job to do, however small or symbolic that job actually was. On day 17, a narrow drill bit finally broke through into the chamber where the miners were sheltering. For the first time, the surface knew they were alive. But here's the detail that should genuinely surprise you. Full rescue took another 52 days after that. The men spent over 2 months underground even after the world knew exactly where they were, waiting on a rescue shaft that had to be drilled with extraordinary precision through solid rock, a process that simply could not be rushed without risking a second, final collapse. That gap between being found and actually being freed might be the most psychologically brutal stretch of the entire ordeal. Hope without an immediate exit is its own particular kind of pressure. And the same systems that had gotten them through the first 17 days, rationing, structure, shared roles, kept them intact through the second, much longer wait as well. On October 13, 2010, 69 days after the collapse, all 33 miners were brought to the surface alive, one at a time, in a rescue capsule barely wide enough for a single body. What actually happened underground wasn't primarily a story about physical endurance, although there was plenty of that. It was a story about 33 strangers, thrown into a genuine crisis of scarcity, choosing structure over chaos, again and again, in circumstances that would have justified almost anything else. You'll probably never be trapped half a mile underground. But the instinct that saved those men, building fairness and routine out of almost nothing, the moment things fall apart, is the same one your own mind reaches for whenever your world gets smaller and more uncertain than you'd like. It's an old tool, It just rarely gets tested this hard.